You know, I used to love the theme song that we once had on this show because I'm a 1970s rock and roller at heart, and Working Man by the greatest rock and roll band of all time, Rush, seemed to be very fitting. So I thought, but maybe, just maybe, Marvin Gaye's Heard It Through the Grapevine would work pretty well for this show too. Maybe we have another idea for a theme song. We'll probably keep mixing it up every day, but Heard It Through the Grapevine is the way we start the show today. Maybe we need to get a T-shirt for the show. Heard It on Farwell show. It was on this day in 1969 that Marvin Gaye took that song to number one. The song first recorded, of course, by the Miracles, and it was also a million seller for Gladys Knight and the Pips back in 67. But on this day in 1969, Marvin Gaye takes I Heard It Through the Grapevine to number one on the charts. This day is Wednesday, the 26th of March. Welcome to the program. One of my absolute favorite letters to the editor in my morning paper, the Waterloo Region Record, has a letter to the editor saying, what we need is fewer bike lanes and more pothole repairs. Now, listen, you will not get a complaint from me or an argument from me that we need those potholes patched up. But the irony in that juxtaposition of less bike lanes, more pothole repairs, if we had more bike lanes and people rode their bikes more often in those lanes, we wouldn't have as many potholes. You see how that works? I mean, I know the freeze-thaw cycle plays a part, but so too does the weight of all of that vehicular traffic causing the wear and tear on our roads. So if we were to revert to human-powered transportation, i.e. pedaling our bicycles, the roads would be in far better shape. It's much easier to maintain a bike lane, at least the surface of it. But I'll just leave that there. I got a kick out of it when I read it on the editorial page this morning. And speaking of getting a kick out of things, how about the Mayor of Guelph? We love you, Cam Guthrie, we really do. But the biggest complaint that you hear about automated speed camera tickets is the long gap between the infraction and when people get their ticket. It's taking up to 30 days, and you want to speed that up, and maybe Guelph will speed that up. But really, Mayor Guthrie in Guelph, the biggest complaint from automated speed cameras is how long it takes to get the ticket. I call shenanigans. I absolutely call shenanigans on that. The biggest complaint, I believe, about automated speed cameras and the tickets they issue is the cash that they're taking out of our pockets. It's a cash grab, what you're doing with the speed cameras. I don't think we care when we get our ticket in terms of how long it takes from offense to ticket arriving in the mail. I think we care that we're getting it at all, particularly when, you know, we're doing 51 in a 40 at 10:30 at night in a school zone when the school zone speed limit shouldn't apply. That sort of thing. I think that's the biggest complaint, but maybe you know differently, Mayor of Guelph. But I have a feeling that the length of time from infraction to receiving the ticket is not the biggest complaint when it comes to automated speed cameras. All right, how about that Farwell Show 5 for your Wednesday morning? Number one, Region of Waterloo Public Health has received confirmation of not one, but two more cases of the measles, along with additional public exposures related to the ongoing outbreak in southwestern Ontario. The public is urged to check the Region of Waterloo Measles Exposures webpage for information and ongoing updates. Public Health will post future updates on the exposure website and its social media channels. Number two, a man who fled the scene of a crash that killed a cyclist in Guelph last year will spend 5 more months in jail. John Simpson Bard was sentenced yesterday to another 143 days behind bars after getting credit for time served since September. 78-year-old Susan Bard was struck and killed while riding her bike on Victoria Road in Guelph last September. Simpson Bard was arrested later that day at work and charged with impaired driving, among other offenses. Number three on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the federal election campaign comes to Kitchener today. Liberal leader Mark Carney expected to attend a rally this afternoon after making stops in Windsor and London. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be in Quebec today, while NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Hamilton and London. Number 4, Canada once again wondering about tariffs after mixed messages from U.S. President Donald Trump.
Well, I may give a lot of countries breaks, but it's reciprocal, but we might be even nicer than that. You know, we've been very nice to a lot of countries for a long time. I call it Liberation Day. April 2nd is Liberation Day.
April 2nd also happens to be next Wednesday, 1 week from today. 2 senior Trump officials said last week that the administration is expected to focus the much-anticipated April 2nd reciprocal tariff announcement on a narrower set of countries with the biggest trade surpluses and high tariff and non-tariff barriers. So does that mean Canada gets a little bit of a break? We're going to find out, but we're not sure right now. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the United Way. Waterloo Region Communities getting set to honor the contributions of individuals and businesses in the community with its annual Spirit Awards. Awards are presented in categories including Community Impact, Outstanding Workplace, Spirit of Community, and Volunteer of the Year. Among the nominees are the Cambridge Shelter Corporation, YWCA Cambridge, the AIDS Committee of Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo and area, Toyota Motor Manufacturing, and the Waterloo Regional Police Service. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning. Are we ready to be? Do we want to be another Mississauga? We'll talk about that with your morning wake-up call, and you can participate too on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. You probably heard Josh Piercy's story this morning during All News Mornings with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas about the new condominium towers being built at Victoria Commons in Kitchener. I want to talk a little bit more about it, but as you know, the moment we begin the show every day, phone lines are open to you, and I always want to give you a chance to have your say. John is on the phone with us. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Great, thanks. I have political word of the day.
Okay.
Malarkey.
I like malarkey. It's a good word.
Malarkey.
Why do you say that?
I just heard the latest federal polling results and malarkey. I drive across southwestern Ontario every day and talk to dozens of different people, and I yet have to run into a Liberal supporter, so malarkey.
All right, John, malarkey it is, and interesting that you bring that up because we're going to be talking about it just after the 9:30 news this morning, the latest polling numbers, and what I'm calling the Mark Carney bump, a 20-point increase under Mark Carney for the federal Liberals. I have a theory. I'm not sure how much it's been talked about yet. So we'll get into that just after the 9:30 news. And maybe you, like John, feel it's all malarkey. Maureen, good morning.
Hi, good morning. You were asking yesterday where Mark Carney lives. Anything I have ever read about him is that he lived in Ottawa before he moved to England somewhere, I don't know, to be the Bank of England governor. And he's apparently back in Ottawa.
Yes, I learned that after asking the question. The faithful 570 News Radio listenership helped me out. So apparently he's in the Rockcliffe area.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Isn't that where Andre Benoit came from, around that area? I don't know.
Andre Benoit, the former Kitchener Ranger? Yes. I don't know for sure.
Something tells me Rockcliffe. But
okay.
Anyway, also, I'm glad he's not going in that other French debate. Why do we need 2 French debates? We're having one of each. That's normal. And just to let you know, there's not 338 seats anymore. It's gone to 343. They've added a riding in BC, I believe, 2 in Alberta, and 2 in Ontario.
Well, we're going to have to change the name of that polling company, 338 Canada, then, aren't we?
Yeah. I watch the political shows, and I've got this poll tracker thing through CBC, and they're calling for 172 to be a minority, which is half of 343.
That would make sense.
Yep.
So who are they projecting?
Right now, there is like 6 or 7 polls, and they're all Liberal.
Okay. Thanks, Maureen.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. We are engaged in this election. I will say that with certainty. Paul, good morning.
Hey, Mike. I just heard your comments about the poll, and I wasn't going to call in, but when I heard you say that, I thought I gotta throw my 2 cents in. If you, I'm not sure what side of the building your studio is on, but if you look out one of your windows, you can see a newly added political office. And my wife works very close to you in that same area, and they have been inundated with customers complaining about that new political office moving into that section of the boardwalk.
Why?
Because of who they represent.
Well, the office has to go somewhere.
I know it does.
Okay.
But they're I'm just saying that we're hearing that the polls are saying that the Liberals are right up on top, and she can't believe how many people walk in the store and saying, "What is that Liberal office doing there? Get it out."
Fair enough.
Just thought I'd throw it at you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for throwing it at me. I'm for all of your ideas and opinions and thoughts here on the show. I'll tell you what I think about that, because I mentioned last week, it might have even been the week before. My apologies for time just kind of blending together. But yes, that office was, and it was obvious that the office was for Tim Lewis, whose constituency is Kitchener-Conestoga, which is where this building at the boardwalk sits. That office was being set up before the election was even called. And I know that Green MP Mike Morris also had established a campaign launch and a campaign office before the election was called. Why are we the last to know? Like, we're the ones that have to vote. How come is it because they need to get a head start setting up their campaign offices? Like, I don't know. I just felt like if anyone should know the information first, it's the people who are being asked to cast their ballot. But anyway, the office is what it is. And it is interesting, perhaps, the difference between what we hear from the ivory towers of pollsters, if you will, to on the ground. And both John and Paul seem insistent that on the ground, the sentiment is much different than what the polls are telling us. Again, we're going to get into it a little more just after the 9:30 news. I got to take a quick break. We'll come back with more of your calls and the new Mississauga-Kitchener. Kitchener Saga? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Here's my takeaway so far from the election campaign that has just begun. You are engaged and invested in it. And I love that, because we've been having a lot of conversations about it, and we're only into the third full day and fourth day overall of the campaign. Let's get back to the phones, hear more from you this morning. Donna, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Question for you.
Yeah.
Who do you always says has a really good pulse on this community?
Who really has a good pulse on this community?
Yeah, who do you always say does? Usually you say me.
You do, Di. You know what's going on.
There you go, buddy.
Okay.
Every time, everyone I know is going Liberal, or I've heard a few Green. But I have to admit, I've always been blue-blooded to the core and just went blue provincially, but I can't do it federally. And living in Forest Hill, did you know they halved our subdivision federally? The left side of Westmount Road heading towards Waterloo is now Kitchener-Conestoga, and the right-hand side of Westmount Road is Kitchener Centre.
There you go. Isn't that interesting?
Go Tim Lewis.
Go Tim Lewis. So why can't you go blue, Donna?
I don't like Polyev. I don't know the man, but I just don't like him.
Okay. Fair enough. Appreciate your call. Good to hear from you. And Donna is plugged in around here. I can tell you that. Kevin, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike. A couple of issues. Sorry. I'm starting to lose my faith into this polling system because I don't know. I mean, how can somebody earn 20 points in a matter of a couple of weeks when he hasn't been done nothing? I mean, some leaders, they cannot even gain 20 points in like 2 years.
Well, what if the goalposts moved, Kevin? What if this was no longer an election about Justin Trudeau or the carbon tax, and it became an election about who's best positioned to lead us into a future against Donald Trump? What about that?
I agree with that. I mean,
so that could be 20 points then, right?
one of the weakest prime ministers I've ever had in the history of Canada was Justin Trudeau. I mean, look where we are compared to 2015. In 2015, we were the second happiest country in the world. We're now ranking 18th.
Third to 18th, but yes.
Yeah. So it had much of something to do with Trudeau. But anyway, that story aside, I mean, I have lost last two elections I did vote Liberal, but I've lost my faith. I cannot trust them anymore because this time I'm going to go blue. And I know that Poilievre has more experience in politics. He's been a politician way longer than Carney. And I think experience talks. So that's what I think.
Okay, Kevin. So experience in politics talks, which is fair. And some would say, wow, career politician, 8 terms already for Pierre Poilievre. I want somebody with business experience or Bank of Canada and England governorship experience. That's why I'm going the other way. As I said, I have a theory about this, which also might explain the 20-point increase for Mark Carney. And we'll talk about it right after this update from the 570 News Center when we take a closer look at the polling that exists today. It has been what I've been describing as a Mark Carney bump, to be sure. As for Kitchener Saga, this is what I had in mind to talk about at the beginning of the show today, but I always like to give you first crack at things. And if you want to take us in a different direction and we'll talk about the federal election, I'm here for it. We will, though, come back to the idea of Kitchener becoming another Mississauga and all of the tall buildings that are being built seemingly everywhere, as we follow a story that was reported during All News Mornings today with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas. So I promise we'll come back to it. We've got lots of time together today here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Malarkey. That was one word used as we began the show today in reference to the current election news, which shows a significant increase in support for Liberal leader Mark Carney. Go back 3-4 months and the Liberals were dead in the water. It was going to be a coronation kind of campaign for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who was sure to be our next prime minister. And now that is much less sure. Mario Canseco is the president at Research Co. Joins us by phone this morning. Mario, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here with you.
It's great to have you on the show and get some perspective on these numbers. What are you seeing when it comes to polling and the increase that the Liberals have enjoyed under Mark Carney?
Well, it's certainly not something that you see every day. To have a fluctuation that is double digits up for one party, double digits down for another after a leadership change in such a quick period is not something that we're used to seeing. We did one of the final surveys of the Justin Trudeau tenure on the first week of January, right before he announced he was stepping down. And the Conservatives were at 47% nationally. Majorities of decided voters in British Columbia and in Ontario saying that they were going to vote for the Conservatives. And now that seems to be gone. We have statistical ties in those two provinces, the Liberals coming back in Quebec and essentially pushing the Bloc and the Conservatives to a tie for second place. And the numbers for Mark Carney on a personal level are quite high. So it's a remarkable turnaround when you think about just where we were a couple of months ago.
You mentioned the Liberals coming back in Quebec, Mario. Is this support that you're seeing in your polling across the country, or are there regions that still show Conservatives with stronger support?
Well, I think they're holding on to the areas where they did well in 2019 and 2021, the prairies in Alberta. It's interesting to look at the numbers, particularly here in BC, where I am, because we've only had a couple of elections where the Liberals finished in first place federally. 1968, the first Trudeau-mania, and 2015, the second Trudeau-mania. So to have a statistical tie at this stage of the race is not something that we're used to seeing. Back in 2015, we saw the fluctuation, sometimes people choosing the NDP, then the Conservatives, and then on the final stages of the race, that's when the Liberals managed to become the most popular party in the province. So the fact that this is happening on the first week of the campaign I think it's directly related to the change at the helm, but also with the level of attention that people are paying to the Trump tariff issue. Significantly higher levels of awareness and familiarity with this than what we've seen with other scandals in the past. So to me, that suggests that maybe we'll have a higher voter turnout than what we had in 2019 or 2021.
I get the sense, Mario, that the U.S. tariff issue is the leading issue on the minds of voters right now. But what is polling telling you?
Well, we see it for the first time as the most important issue facing the country. 30% of Canadians who tell us that Canada-U.S. relations is the one issue that they're worried about. There's a bit of an age gap. Canadians over the age of 55 are more likely to be worried about this. You look at the numbers with the 18 to 34-year-olds, and they're more likely to be concerned about housing and the economy and jobs. But this definitely plays a role in the way people feel about their candidates. We were just undergoing 6 or 7 month periods where housing became the number one issue facing the country. It's something that started in BC, then climbed the charts a little bit in Alberta, in Atlantic Canada, and in Ontario. But now that's taken sort of a backseat to everything that is happening with Donald Trump. This isn't good news for the Conservatives, because part of what happened over the past few months was they connected very well on the housing file. They were able to get a high level of support from young voters, which is something that didn't happen under Erin O'Toole or even Stephen Harper. So if they can concentrate again on discussing the bread and butter issues for the younger population, they might actually have a chance of catching up to the Liberals.
Are you able to put your finger on what might be behind? I mean, besides maybe Mark Carney and the change of Liberal leadership, what might be behind this resurgence in the polls?
I think there's a couple of issues at play. I think the Conservatives connected very well in 2024 by hammering the Liberals on what Justin Trudeau was doing and where he should step down, which he has, and dealing with the carbon tax, which in a way has been taken off the ballot right before the campaign began. And this is something that we experienced here in BC in our latest provincial election, where the opposition Conservatives were very clear that they wanted to get rid of the carbon tax. And the governing NDP in the early stages of the campaign say, well, we want to do that too, so let's focus on some other issues. So you spend roughly a year and a half campaigning on getting rid of the carbon tax, calling this a carbon tax election consistently. Now it's gone, and you need to rejig and figure out a different message and a different way to connect with voters. I think this is what's behind some of the announcements related to housing and all of the photo ops that were essentially Pierre Poilievre looks like a family man. They're really trying to get that Generation X and millennial votes that they definitely had in the bag just a few months ago.
Mario, I appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure, Mike. Anytime.
Mario Canseco is the president of Research Co., and virtually unprecedented is a double-digit deficit turned into an almost statistical dead heat, a 20-point leap for the Liberals in terms of popular support. And what we have now from Research Co.'s polling is 41% of decided voters in Canada would cast a ballot for the Liberal candidate in their constituency. That's if the federal election were to take place today. And that's up 20 points since a similar Research Co. poll in January. I am still waiting for, and I expect to see, the federal Conservative Party make its necessary pivot here. We're in the early days of the campaign. Something will change strategically because, as Mario points out, this becoming a carbon tax election has been taken off the table. And I think we can say objectively that, strictly looking at it from a strategic position, the Liberals have done a very good job here in taking away the Conservatives' thunder. No more carbon tax, at least at the consumer level. Mark Carney is sounding very much like Pierre Poilievre when it comes to policies around affordability, taxes, tax cuts, etc. So what are you left with? You're left with the top-of-mind issue for Canadians, which seems to be the U.S. and tariffs, and who you might think best deals with that issue. Here's a theory that I have, and I wonder how it lands with you. No disrespect intended, but let's just be honest. Jagmeet Singh and the NDP I mean, there are some reports that suggest they might not even have official party status by the time this is done. They're in shambles. Where do you think NDP supporters will park their vote? If they're not going to put it back with Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, where do you think it's going to go? Because I don't think it's going to go to the Conservatives. Therefore, that might be another reason that the Liberal support is increasing like it is. That's my theory. Always happy to hear yours. You've heard the poll numbers. I know you have. Do they mean anything to you? Let me know your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
To have a statistical tie at this stage of the race, not something that we're used to seeing. Back in 2015, we saw the fluctuation, sometimes people choosing the NDP, then the Conservatives, and then on the final stages of the race, that's when the Liberals managed to become the most popular party in the province. So the fact that this is happening on the first week of the campaign, I think it's directly related to the change at the helm, but also with the level of attention that people are paying to the Trump tariff issue.
Mario Canseco is the president of Research Co. It's a 20-point increase in the polls for the Liberals under new leader Mark Carney, now running ahead of the Conservatives if the election were to be held today. My theory, where do you think all those NDP votes are going? Because I'm not sure they're going to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Yvette, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike. So as I was getting connected, you had said the point about the NDP votes, because that's what I just looked up, is that NDP last federal election got, I think it was like 17% of the vote. So those are gone pretty much now. I think like the last poll, they said 7%. So I 100% agree with that. But also in my household, we're having discussions about fiscal conservatives versus social conservatives. And so I feel like if you're on a fiscal conservative line, that Carney is very, very attractive. So I think that has a lot to play into it as well, because, you know, they've talked about, you know, lifetime politicians and this and that versus, so for Pierre Poilievre. But I think that because social conservative, that kind of scares me. And you see what's happening south of the border, whereas fiscal conservative, that makes me want to lean more liberal. So I think there's so many issues to deal with right now. So,
Yvette, very well said. Appreciate the call. I think you're getting fiscal conservatism from both of these leaders, Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. But because Pierre Poilievre has that big tent that he wants to keep everyone under, we know there is a much more socially conservative side to the Conservative Party as opposed to the socially liberal side under Mark Carney. And I think most Canadians fall under that fiscal conservative and socially liberal. So if that's what Mark Carney is presenting, that might explain, along with the NDP vote, why he's leading in the polls. Gary, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So I think you're absolutely right. I've been thinking about this for a few days right now, and absolutely all those NDP votes are going to be going to the Liberals. And the two parties are more aligned than either one of them would be with the Conservatives. So, and I don't think the NDP voters would. They just don't see their party going anywhere right now. So I think they're absolutely going to be going with the Liberal. There's some strategic voting going on there. And it's nice to see, I think, that people have figured that one out. But yeah, I've been thinking about the same thing you have. And I think that's absolutely the way it's going to go.
All right, Gary, I appreciate that call. It just seems to make sense to me. This Liberal Party under Mark Carney certainly doesn't seem to be as far to the left as it was under Justin Trudeau. But if you're left of center, as the NDP are, it's hard to imagine you go over to the Conservatives instead of kind of stopping closer to the middle with the Liberals. It's just my theory. Clinton, good morning.
How's it going, Mike?
Good. How's it going with you?
Not too bad. I sort of agree with your last caller. Like, frankly, I do believe that the NDP voters are swinging towards more for the Liberals right now. But what I find funny is that with Carney, everything he's preaching, he seems to sound more like conservative than anything. So why would I want to vote for a Liberal who's preaching everything that the Conservative Party is? I might as well just stick with who I have been sort of supporting for the last couple of years. This sounds a little ridiculous. And if he keeps swinging that way, he may lose the NDP votes depending how far he goes. It could be just a lot of bluffing on his part too. I really don't know how this is going to go.
You know what? That is an excellent point, Clinton. I mean, essentially what you're looking at here is, do you want Pierre Poilievre or do you want the person who sounds like Pierre Poilievre? And if you want the person who sounds like Pierre Poilievre, do you trust that he will continue to sound like that after he's elected?
Exactly.
Yeah. Great point, Clinton. Really appreciate the call. We'll take more calls, but we got to take a quick break first. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I know, like you know, that the only poll that matters is the poll on Election Day. But the polls early in this federal election are telling a very interesting story, and one that's got people talking. A 20-point gain under Mark Carney for the federal Liberals. And if, according to polling from Research Co., an election were to be held today, 41% of decided voters say they will cast their ballot for Mark Carney and the federal Liberals. Do the polls have any impact on you at all? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Mike, from the Point Clark Lighthouse. I've been thinking about this, what you're saying about the NDP right now, and I see something happening with my NDP friends. Some of my friends who are blue-collar people, they're going to actually vote for Poilievre, Mike. Can you believe that?
Actually, I can, because somebody asked me not too long ago how the NDP, with its much further left policies, is in any way the party of the working man, which it used to be, I think, but not any. I don't know that it is anymore.
Yeah. And what I find just amusing is several months ago, the Conservatives were all crowing about how far ahead they are in the polls. Now the polls are not to be believed, right? So I find that amusing too. But Mike, personally, I just changed my residence, and now I'm a member of the Huron Bruce, no longer in Waterloo person. And what I'm seeing up here is that you have a lot of people who didn't want to vote for Trudeau because he was too far left. And now people are taking a wait-and-see attitude, and they're looking at Mark Carney. One of my friends told me they were never a Conservative fan, but they didn't like Trudeau so much, so they were going to hold their nose and vote for the Conservative. So my biggest disappointment being a member of the Conservative Party is our fearless leader there didn't pivot fast enough. And that's my thoughts, Mike.
All right, Mike, I appreciate that. I still expect that pivot to come. I really do. You can't read the tea leaves and not understand that something needs to change, right? If you're the federal Conservatives. And again, on the NDP side, if you're frustrated with the party that may not even achieve party status in this election, where are you going to park your vote? It's unlikely, I think, that it goes over to the Conservatives. Sean, I got about 30 seconds.
Mike, I'm just curious what is going on with the carbon tax and the capital gains tax as far as numbers go. So if we get rid of the carbon tax, our gas prices will be $1.
Well, I don't know about $1, but that's a really good point, Sean. When you talk about the promises that are being made in terms of tax cuts, ending the capital gains tax increase, ending the carbon tax, et cetera, this is adding up to billions and billions of dollars in revenue that the government will not be collecting. So how then does it balance its books? It sounds like, and I heard an analysis yesterday, that the way to do it, to balance the books in that regard, is with cuts to the civil service. Can you make cuts that deep for the billions and billions of dollars that would be required to balance? And Clive's email to Mike at 570news.com gets to the heart of this. The political question for today is how many billions will be promised today by the leaders of the Liberal and Conservative parties? And then how do we balance the budget without those billions? Interesting times indeed. All right, we're going to get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then a new segment we're bringing to the show on a weekly basis, Minding Ottawa's Business with the Blacklocks reporter. Stay with us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. as I've told you before, I like to listen to all kinds of talk radio and other information-based programs. And it was on one of those other programs that I kept hearing this next guest who's about to join our show on a regular basis. And the day, I'd heard him multiple times, and the day that the deal was sealed for me was a day that he was talking about the federal civil service and how much it's costing us and how much we could probably lop off of it without anybody really noticing. Because you know how I have felt about our bloated civil service, not to mention the contracting out that happens within it. So reached out, and I'm really happy that Tom Korski, who's the managing editor with the Blacklocks Reporter, is able to join us on the show this morning. Tom, thanks very much for your work, and thanks for making time for the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about this morning was the riding that Mark Carney is running in for this federal election. It is very interesting that a long-serving MP in that area is not being allowed to run again by the Liberals.
The three-termer, his name was Chandra Arya, and he had 3 terms, pretty safe Liberal seat. He was not a high-profile member of the Liberal caucus, but a bit of a hellraiser and independent thinker. And he had was the first candidate to announce for the Liberal leadership, was mysteriously disqualified. The party never explained why he couldn't run. It was an unfortunate byproduct, by the way. 2 candidates were disqualified, Mike, and they were the South Asian MPs in the race and former MPs. And then Chandra was stripped of his nomination to run for a 4th term in Nepean, a suburb of Ottawa. No reason was given, and that nomination was given to the Prime Minister. It is peculiar, but what is more peculiar, and I don't say this in a partisan or way or try to be vexatious or make trouble, the Prime Minister talks about his security clearance. He got his security clearance. So he can hear all the secrets of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. They're going to come in and tell him all about it. And he was asked about this mysterious MP who, after 3 terms, was deemed unfit to serve in the Liberal caucus, to which Mr. Carney replied, I don't know. They didn't tell me. I didn't ask. I guess there was certain information, quote, end of quote. That's not really getting it done, Mike.
Because he would have had that information, correct?
All he had
Presumably.
to do was ask for it. That's all he had. I thought that was the whole point of having these famous security clearances. I know I don't want to get sidetracked. There's this issue now, this mini tornado of controversy over security clearances. Let me tell you, last June, there was a committee, I'll tell you a story, National Committee on Security and Intelligence of Parliamentarians, and they issued a red-hot report. It said there are spies on Parliament Hill. There are parliamentarians who are feeding confidential information to certain foreign embassies who are really keeping their colleagues under surveillance. And party leaders, like the New Democrats, Jagmeet Singh, got their security clearance so they could see the report and name the names. And Mr. Singh came out. He said, this report, it's breathtaking. This is so serious. I'm very upset. And he was then asked, what are the names? And I can't tell you, he said, because of the oath of secrecy that is required when you get your security clearance. Name another G7 country. Forgive me, Mike, where you're going to have a general election that will determine the fate of your country, where members of the government caucus are mysteriously denied their nomination, and there is a report of parliamentarians that points to possibly criminal activity by others, but the names are no one's business. It's unbelievable.
It certainly does come across that way. One of the other stories that I enjoyed at blacklocks.ca, Tom, and I tread carefully here, or maybe I'm doing that because I'm still 3 or 4 years back in our history here, but a majority of Canadians say illegal immigrants and refugee claimants receive too many federal benefits. There was a time not too long ago, if we utter these words out loud, much less publish them, that we are going to be accused of all manner of things.
It's striking, isn't it?
It is.
He's a racist, she's a racist. You're right, even 3 or 4 years ago. You know what's most striking of all? These are the only polls we read. are polls that are commissioned by federal departments and agencies. Very often it's not the response that's interesting, it's the question they asked. We read a lot of internal cabinet polls. It tells you where cabinet's head is. This poll was not done by the Proud Boys. It was done by the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. Are you kidding me? They hired a Winnipeg pollster, and they asked people. And what were the responses they got? Why characterize it? Why don't I just read from their report? 41% of Canadians surveyed said there's too much attention focused on the rights of newcomers. 56% say refugees and asylum seekers receive too many benefits, end of quote. I think immigration has been so mismanaged that there has been a comment made by many members of all parties in the House of Commons, the generational consensus on immigration in our country, the land of Indigenous people and descendants of immigrants, has been shattered, and it will be that way for a generation. It's epic, Mike.
Does it surprise you to see polling like this, especially that source for the polling?
I'm not surprised by the source. I am struck by the data. It's absolutely striking. The Department of Immigration for many, many years has done what they call annual tracking surveys. This is internal data. And their tracking surveys have pointed out for the first time, and I've been reading these polls for years, it goes back 10, 15 years. For the first time, their polls identify it is the majority opinion, not a kooky fringe minority. It is the majority opinion that there are too many immigrants. For the first time, they asked people, well, sure, you know, you hear about immigrants on the news maybe, but not in your town. I mean, the people who, you know, your kids play hockey with, they're okay. All the surveys have always said, yeah, oh, no, the ones in my town are fine. No, not anymore. They ask you, what about your town? And the response is the same. There are too many immigrants in my town, my province, my country. The set-off question that they've asked for years. Do you agree or disagree with the statement that immigrants are changing the country in ways you don't like? For the first time, a majority have said yes. That's unbelievable. If you had done that 20 years ago, it's absolutely striking, Mike.
That's the perfect word for it, Tom. Before I let you go, just to bring this back to where I started and the program that I heard you on when you talked about our federal bureaucracy and how much we could probably lop off without, other than those who were lopped off, people really noticing. But I couldn't help but notice the $250,000 spent on travel by a managing director at our Bank of Canada.
Very true. Her name was Deputy Director Renison, and she took a lot of flights. We got this through Access to Information. It was highly entertaining. She took a lot of business class flights all around the world. She went to Brasilia and Marrakesh. She went to Paris 6 times. 5 times it was in the springtime in Paris. I've never had the experience. I bet it was very pleasant, Mike. Her travel costs were over $260,000, $262,000. Well, that's no one's business, except she did this when Cabinet said we have to cut discretionary travel. The finance minister in the day, Chrystia Freeland, said we have to get those costs down. We have to run a lean government for the benefit of taxpayers. No one told Lori. And, of course, the Bank of Canada famously issued many, many reports about carbon emissions, and they even issued a report that said, we have to reduce the bank's carbon footprint, end of quote. You don't say.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry, Tom.
You will laugh or cry, correct.
Really appreciate you making time for the show. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
Tom Korski, managing editor at the Blacklocks Reporter. It is a subscription-based site at blacklocks.ca. Well worth the price of subscription. Tom and his team from various media outlets over the years have come together to mind Ottawa's business. And after hearing Tom multiple times, I knew that we had to have him on his show because the particular focus is Ottawa's business, the business of our federal government. And this is just a little snapshot of what you can read at blacklocks.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I think immigration has been so mismanaged that there has been a comment made by many members of all parties in the House of Commons, the generational consensus on immigration in our country, the land of Indigenous people and descendants of immigrants, has been shattered, and it will be that way for a generation.
Tom Korski is the managing editor at the Blacklocks Reporter. You can find it online, blacklocks.ca. It is a subscription-based site minding Ottawa's business. And as I mentioned at the outset, I've heard Tom on a number of different programs over these last many months. I've always enjoyed the perspective. It's not one we get everywhere. And Tom and his team focus almost exclusively on the goings-on in the nation's capital, around our federal government, its bureaucracy, etc. And I reached out to Tom, and he was more than willing to join us on the show, and we will have him here on a regular basis so we can also, from the region of Waterloo, mind Ottawa's business. We are, of course, interested in minding our own business that is right here in the region. And I want to take you back to something we alluded to, or at least I did at the beginning of the show today. And this follows a phone call we got yesterday from Chris, and I'll play that in just a moment. But there was a meeting held last night, and it's important to point out that nothing has been recommended yet to Kitchener Council, but the Victoria Commons development, this is kind of St. Leger, Victoria area, Wellington, St. Leger, that area. The Victoria Commons development that's already there and contains some 4 to 6 story condominiums and was to have towers added, but at a maximum height of 12 stories. The proposal now calls for towers, the lowest of which will be 21 stories and the highest 35, the other 33. That's what's being proposed. More than 1,100 units will be added to the Victoria Commons development. It was always intended to happen, but again, prior to this most recent proposal, the maximum height was going to be 12 stories. And Chris called yesterday and expressed some concern around this.
I'm commenting on the story here about Victoria Common, a small little area in the middle of Kitchener, between Margaret Ave, St. Leger, Blucher Street, and Louisa Street. Many years ago, they got a zone change application approved to put in a small subdivision. So there's a middle part in there they haven't developed. And I hear that they want to, in this middle part, they want to put 3 towers in there. One's 30-story plus. Basically, 2 blocks as a crow flies from Barta Park. Do we have to give everybody a building permit to do this kind of stuff? Like, do we really want to be a Mississauga here? Those townhouses, and it was agreed on a 12-story limit when the 6 and 4-story buildings went in with some townhouses. Now they're going to another zone change, and they want to build the sky's the limit. I got a hold of my counselor, Counselor Stretch, and said, why don't we have it at the Brediff Center or at the City Hall? What are they scared of? They want to face people. You know how many people are intimidated and don't like to go online in front of a screen? Come on. I mean, we got to be up in arms about this some way. 12 stories is enough. I don't know that there is a reluctance to meet the public face-to-face. Sometimes these virtual meetings are easier, and they're not always all that well attended, so save the expense, the time, etc. But to Chris's point, and look, I recognize this happens across the city, and every time it does, we have the same conversation. Well, the NIMBYs are holding up necessary housing in our community. This is not in my backyard. It's definitely in Chris's. But I am sympathetic to his characterization of Kitchener becoming another Mississauga. Look, we are a growing community. As it stands, we're the 10th largest municipality in the entire country. We are a desirable place for people to come, and we're going to need places for them to live. And if you can create more than 1,100 units of housing as opposed to whatever the 12-story towers might have provided, then perhaps you do that.
The other thing we have to remember is when these proposals come forward, if a city pushes back against it, oftentimes it will go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, where almost every time the developer wins its case and gets what it wants. So get ready for some higher towers, likely higher than the 12 stories that were originally proposed at Victoria Commons. Again, 21, 31, 33, or 33 and 35. And not far from there, at the corner essentially of Victoria and Margaret, more towers of 20-plus stories are proposed as well. So that area is going to become another area that is clustered with tall apartment buildings. Why? Because we need to grow up, we can't grow out, and we need to increase the density in our communities. Does that make us Kitchener-Saga? Maybe to some degree and through some eyes. And when we talked about this yesterday after Chris's call, Aaron sent me an email and said, if you don't like it, you can leave. We are a growing community. That means we need housing. That means jobs are created. I just hope those jobs aren't all Uber Eats jobs. And off we go. But this is where we're at in the growth and maturity of our community. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. What is it that we're looking for in this federal election? I know one thing that I'm looking for. It became abundantly clear yesterday as I listened to the various leaders speak. One person who is a long-serving, or had been, provincial politician thinks that what Canadians need in this election is someone who can offer us hope. We'll have that conversation with the former provincial MPP in about 30 minutes' time, just after the 11 a.m. news this morning. Right now, we are about to send you to the 570 News Centre for your 10:30 update. Before 11, we'll check in with the Cambridge community players who are getting ready for their final performance of the season, and the Waterloo Region Family Network. I can't believe it's been 10 years, but here we go. A decade of the Evening of Elegance. So let's learn more about the Waterloo Region Family Network and that upcoming Evening of Elegance. That's coming up right after this on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it is 10 years now, and I can't believe it's been 10. Early on, I was able to participate in one or two of these. My hockey schedule, though, inevitably seems to be in conflict with the Waterloo Region Family Network's Evening of Elegance, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about it on the show, and so we will. Sue Simpson is the executive director at WRFN, the Waterloo Region Family Network. Joins us in studio. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, as always, to have you here. And Jody Purdy is with us as well. And Jody is on the fundraising working group with WRFN. Always nice to see you two. Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. It really is. So, Sue, let's start with the Waterloo Region Family Network itself. How did it get started? What do you do?
Well, we're actually celebrating 15 years of WRFN this year, so we're really excited about that. It started as a homegrown family network founded by 5 parents who have children with loved ones or family members that have a disability or mental health need. And so really realizing that there was a need in community to support them on their journeys, to connect them to each other and connect them to resources that are in our community. So we're so excited now. 15 years, it's hard to believe, and we've now supported over 4,200 families.
Yeah, it really is. And I remember those roots with just those families, those 5 sets of parents that came together to create this organization. And here we are 15 years later, all those children helped along the way. How do you do it funding-wise, though? Where are the funding sources coming from for WRFN?
Funding is always a challenge. We appreciate any funding that we do receive. We do not receive any direct government funding, so that makes it harder. We have an amazing partnership model, so we have partners who support us on a regular basis annually, as well as some grants. So we're always looking for various grants. We've been fortunate to have some general operating support for the last 5 years, which makes a difference because we can use those funds the way we choose to that are most beneficial to the families that we're supporting and the resources we can share. And then it's fundraising. So Evening of Elegance is a huge part of that because it's our only main fundraising event. We do have annual appeals and a spring appeal as well, but this is our only physical event of the year.
Yeah, and it's a big one, and it's an important one, and enter the fundraising working group and the work that you and your team do, Jody. I mean, I can only imagine the amount of effort and work that goes into creating a signature event like this and fundraising for such an important organization.
Well, typically it starts with the Evening of Elegance in the previous year. So 2024, we start tidying up and I go beside Sue and I say, okay, so for next year, right? And that's where we start the conversations because it's fresh in our mind. And we do have a wrap-up meeting right after the event with our wonderful working group. And we talk about things that we loved, things that we can improve on, and how do we capture more members of our community, and how do we get more engagement.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an immediate conversation while everything's fresh, and it happens throughout the course of the year. So it's not something that we can throw together or have ever tried to throw together. It's a constant work in progress.
When you look back, Jody, over those 10 years, this being the 10th for the Evening of Elegance, have you seen that engagement increasing?
We have, right? We also had, obviously, everyone had COVID and we had that shift, but we were very fortunate that we were able to think on our toes and we had more of a virtual event, which was amazing. We had a cooking event online where you could engage with your family. So that was a really nice twist that we were able to offer and delicious too. I think we made shawarma that evening. And we see an increase in our attendance yearly. And of course, we'd love to see more, right? There's always an opportunity to grow. And if we have to get a bigger venue, that's a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
Right? So we're always reaching out to anybody in the community that would be interested in attending. There's always tickets available. At this point, we have tickets available until April 4th. And people can get the tickets online at wrfn.info. And we welcome anybody who's interested in participating. It's a wonderful evening with great food and wine pairings. And we always provide some sort of entertainment twist in the evening as well. And it's a good opportunity to network and mingle as well.
WRFN.info. Those ticket sales continuing until next Friday, April the 4th. And the event comes up end of April. What can you tell us about the Evening of Elegance itself, Jody?
Well, it's definitely an elegant evening. So it is going to be happening this year at Confederation Hall. We will be starting our event at 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. Tickets are available at $150 per person. And then we have a different menu this year where we are going to offer people different kinds of pastas available. We'll have a pasta station as well as a chili station for a different twist this year. And build your own salad station where we'll offer different kinds of proteins with that as well. And then my favorite that I'm looking forward to is the cheese and chocolate station.
Hello.
So you'll find me over at the chocolate-covered strawberry. So that's definitely where I will be this evening. And we're just looking forward to just having everybody out there.
Absolutely. Sue, what does this evening mean to the Waterloo Region Family Network in terms of what it provides towards your annual funding, towards the awareness in the community, et cetera?
It means so much, Mike. It's especially awareness in the community. It builds awareness. We appreciate all who come and enjoy the evening. Some of the families we support are able to come, not always, but it's also an opportunity for others in community to learn more about what we do. We're always celebrating the work that we do. We usually have someone who comes as a guest speaker to talk a little bit about that. And it's also a night to honor our volunteers. So every year we choose one or two volunteers that have been outstanding that particular year. It's really hard because all of our volunteers are outstanding, and we honor them with the Matthew McGregor Volunteer Award each year. And so that's something very special to us. Matthew's family has been a member of our network. Matthew sadly passed away a few years ago, and so it's nice for us to be able to remember him and honor him in that way, but also honor the work of our volunteers. We couldn't do the work that we do without volunteers. We have an amazing staff team, but volunteers add to that, and we just truly appreciate that.
You mentioned earlier, Sue, 15 years now for the organization, Waterloo Region Family Network. Did you ever imagine in year one that we'd be here having this conversation and the organization thriving like it is?
I had hoped we would be,
sure,
but you never know. It's an idea that 5 parents had to move forward and see what happens, and we've evolved over the years to meet the needs of families, and the needs are certainly increasing and becoming more and more complex, so that has certainly caused us to shift a little bit in how we support, but we are always looking to see what are families looking for from us. And we're very proud to now be, celebrating 15 years is truly amazing. We don't really know where the time went, but I think that's a positive. I think that means that some good things have happened, and we can be really proud of the work that we've done and appreciate the community support that we've had and your support as well. So thank you for having us.
Oh my gosh, always. And Jody, I'm sure you can relate. You and the fundraising working group can relate to time going by so fast because you're so busy planning one event after another.
Yes. So and you blink and it's here, right? But we're thankful for that. We're thankful to see the fruits of our labor, and we're thankful to see all the community engagement that we have. So it pays off in the end, right? You put a lot of heart and soul into this because this is part of your passion. And then when you get to see the end product and you get to see people engaged and enjoying the evening as we always do, and you get the positive feedback, right? We have a lot of people that we will poll after. We'll ask them how they felt about the event, and it's always positive feedback. So that always, it feels good, right? It's one of those things that we did right. We reached the people. We connected with people. We engaged new people. That's the big thing. Like Sue said, we're always trying to engage new people to educate and provide that opportunity for more inclusion in our community.
I'm going to encourage you again to become one of those new people reached. Check out wrfn.info. Get a ticket for the Evening of Elegance. Learn more about the Waterloo Region Family Network. And let's keep increasing that reach. Thanks both of you for being here. And Jody, say hi to Big Poppy for me. Okay?
Will do.
Jody Purdy is on the fundraising working group at the Waterloo Region Family Network. Sue Simpson is its executive director. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Mike.
This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our regular listeners, Clive, who always enjoys the segments we're able to do around arts and culture in the community. And I know that Clive walks the talk. He not only enjoys the segments, but he is an active patron in the arts. Always wants to know if we can have more. Well, we do the very best that we can, because we too here at the show are passionate supporters of our arts and culture community. And that's why we're pleased to have with us this morning Jane McWilliams, who's the chair of the Cambridge Community Players. Jane, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I am excellent, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you. It's nice to see the sun. It always makes for a better day that way.
You know, it's funny. I thought that this morning, too, when it started to come up, because it's been a couple of days, and it's a game changer, isn't it?
It sure is.
Absolutely.
Sure is.
Let's talk a little bit, Jane, about Rose's Dilemma, which is your final show of the season, and it's going to open next week. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, I'm very excited. It's actually a Neil Simon play, and when I first read it, I thought I knew Neil Simon. A lot of people, when they hear Neil Simon, they can picture the kind of play that they're going to see. But what attracted me to this script is it's quite different. When you read it, people are saying, this is Neil Simon. It was his last play he wrote, and it's not farce. We're used to seeing more of a farce style with Neil Simon. There's great comedy in this, but there's wonderful layers of character and some actual sort of seriousness to it as well, which I love about a play like that. I love depth. I love layers to discover. So this one here is about a writer named Rose. She hasn't written anything for quite a while. She's getting a little desperate, been overspending, and she has a manuscript coming into her hands, which has been written by her former lover, Walsh, who died 5 years earlier. He was a great writer himself, but she has been keeping him basically alive in her mind. She hasn't been able to release him. So he becomes a character on stage. I resist calling him a ghost. It's not a ghost story, but this is the depth where she will not release him. So she has conversations with him on stage. The comedy, though, comes out of the fact the other characters on stage with her don't see him. So sometimes there's very comedic conversations going on where they feel they're part of it and don't understand who she's speaking to. So there's 4 great characters, and it's about whether she's going to produce this manuscript under her name, and they bring in another writer to do it. but some great levels of comedy and seriousness around it.
You mentioned Neil Simon's name, and I think most will recognize that. Obviously, one of our most accomplished playwrights. When you take on a Neil Simon work as a director, Jane, how do you approach it?
It can be intimidating because his shows have been produced by so many people. What I do is I resist going to see how others have interpreted. It would be far too easy to go on and see how others. That's the wonderful thing about drama, about arts, about scripts. You can take it and take it different directions. The way that it works with who you're working with, what's your level of skill in the cast, and how do you read it, and how is it relevant today? Sometimes things change according to what's going on. So I really do go into it quite open-minded and work very much with the cast as to what do they see and what's evolving. I love the evolution and the development of a show. I believe if you lock in right from the beginning process of the blocking process at the beginning, sort of say, hey, this is the way I see it and that's it, you're going to miss a lot, because that's the fun of it, is discovering right up until even this point. We still discover lines and elements as we get onto the stage that are exciting, that you didn't notice before, and that add that level of depth.
The Cambridge Arts Theatre is a beautiful space for the show to happen. It opens next Friday evening. How can we get tickets and see the Rose's Dilemma, Jane?
You can absolutely. It is a beautiful building, and we have a beautiful set. I have a wonderful crew working on this, as well as a cast, and it's gorgeous. So if you go to the CambridgeCommunityPlayers.com website, it's very easy to go on and buy tickets, book those tickets. We have 2 weekends that it's running. We have some evening shows and we have some matinees. So we'd be really excited for people to come out and book those tickets ahead of time. And it's really quite a good deal and a good night out.
It really is. 47 Water Street South is the place if you don't know where the Cambridge Arts Theatre is. And as you come up on the end of another season with the Cambridge Community Players, Jane, how are you feeling about the space that arts and culture occupies in our community?
We're proud. I've long time been a supporter of the arts, not just drama and the performing arts, but all the arts. But I'm very proud of our organization, Cambridge Community Players, formerly Galt Little Theatre. We just celebrated last year our 90th year. And so we are a long, long time running amateur group in Cambridge, been going 90 years plus, and we're so proud because anybody can come and join our organization in so many ways. You don't have to be an actor. You don't have to even work backstage. We need all sorts of skills and all sorts of members. So we're proud of how we fit in as a community.
Looking forward to the next 90 years. We'll leave that to the next generation, but you and I will continue enjoying this first 90 together. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you, too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Jane McWilliams is the chair of the Cambridge Community Players, formerly the Galt Little Theatre, 90 years young in the city. And the final show of the season, Jane just so happens to direct Rose's Dilemma. It's a Neil Simon production, and you can check it out for yourself. The curtain rises next Friday evening. Details at CambridgeCommunityPlayers.com. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I would like to invite you to a party. Seriously, it's a party that we are hosting to launch the 12th annual Farwell for Hire fundraising campaign. So it's going to happen on the 1st of May, because it's the month of May that we do the fundraising campaign each and every year. And I will be going out to do odd jobs in an effort to raise as much money as I possibly can for cystic fibrosis research. And we thought, why not kick things off with a party this year? So as I said, it's going to happen on May the 1st. That's a Thursday. It won't go too late. We'll probably wrap up around 9:30 or so, because, you know, it's a school night. We all have to work the next day. But it's going to be at the museum in downtown Kitchener. Something's Always Flying is going to provide music for us. The Village Caterer is going to be bringing in some food for us. We're going to have a silent auction to raise some money. And your purchase of a ticket also turns into a donation, because everything that we bring in on the night of the party is going to be in support of cystic fibrosis research. Everything has either been donated or any nominal expenses have been covered. So it's all fundraising all the time. And I'd love to just hang out with you outside the show. So please consider buying a ticket. It's only $25. You get the music, you get the food, you get the fun. Details are on our show's Facebook page, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show, or shoot me an email, mike@570news.com. I'll help you get tickets. Would love to see you at the Farwell for Hire launch party on Thursday, May the 1st at the museum in downtown Kitchener. This is The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. What do we need in this federal election? What are Canadians looking for? Let's talk about that a little more with a good friend of the program, John Malloy, who's a former Liberal MPP who represented Kitchener Centre for many years, and now the director of the Centre for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College in Waterloo. John, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Do you see this as being an election about more than just the threat of tariffs from the United States?
Definitely. Listen, I think every election there's sort of a heart and head situation. I think the head, the intellect is saying, okay, who's going to bring in the best policies to protect us from what's happening in the United States? Who's going to be the strongest negotiator with Donald Trump? But I think the heart is moving beyond these specific issues and looking at a world which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense anymore. Our traditional alliances are crumbling. We're seeing what's happening in Eastern Europe with Ukraine and the United States making nice with Russia. We're seeing the Middle East is, again, not making a lot of sense what's happening there. The whole threat to democracy we're seeing south of the border. I mean, the world is getting crazier and crazier. You layer on top of it climate change. You look at what's happening domestically, the rise of the use of soup kitchens and food banks, and a whole generation that can't avoid a house. I think people are scared, and I think people are looking beyond these policy issues and looking for the leader that can offer them some hope in a world that's just gone mad.
It seemed until very recently, John, that Pierre Poilievre was that leader who could offer the hope of a more affordable future, for example. Do you still see strengths in the Conservative leader's approach here?
Well, definitely he caught everyone's attention. And he did it by talking about bringing common sense to government. I know common sense has a particular resonance here in Ontario from Mike Harris, but putting in the Poilievre context, he was talking about running a government where things worked, where he set the table for a society where you worked hard, you followed all the rules, and you got ahead. And there was something very, very attractive about that in light of the Trudeau government, because, people know my partisan background, but at the same time, I think anyone would have to say it was a government that talked a lot, that was very performative, but didn't get a lot done. So the idea of this common sense approach is why Poilievre, I think, was 25% or 25 points ahead in the polls. The problem is that common sense doesn't work anymore when there is no common sense. When the world is kind of falling apart, someone who comes out and is angry, who's talking about following the rules. Well, what are the rules anymore? Who's very partisan? That doesn't exactly inspire a lot of hope. So I've not been surprised at the sort of crash that's taken place within the Conservatives, because the hope that was there when the world made sense, it doesn't work anymore. And I'm one of many who said Poilievre hasn't been particularly nimble in changing course.
And because of that, I think this world that makes less and less sense has led some people over to Mark Carney's camp, because he seems to be that kind of person, and particularly given his background at the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, that might well be able to deal with the complex world we're all trying to navigate now. But I wonder if we can translate that and what we might believe Carney capable of to any connection with us on a personal level, the heart you talked about before.
Yeah, and that's, in my mind, that is Mark Carney's biggest challenge in this election, is to connect with voters, to make voters understand that he cares. I was struck during the English language debate amongst the leadership candidates. He was asked about food bank use. And the question, I believe, was, what would you tell Canadians that were using food banks? And he, very appropriately got into a policy answer, and I think he ended with tax cuts for the middle class, was perhaps a little bit off topic. But, all I was channeling through to him to say, I guess, as an armchair political observer, is his first sentence might have been, the Liberal Party has to convince people who are using food banks that they care about them. And I think that would have been a very powerful answer if he can convince Canadians that he cares about them. Because, I'm going to let you and your listeners in on a little secret. None of the parties running have all the answers to this situation. This is such a wild world that we're living in. It's so complicated. Mark Carney doesn't have a folder in his briefcase with all the answers. He's going to manage as best he can, but he's got to be able to say to Canadians, I'm on your side. And even though I may not be able to solve all the problems, I'm there with you. And there's a story that I told in a recent piece I wrote on this for the record of a cabinet minister, an agriculture minister, who represented a very rural area. And even though he was agriculture minister, there wasn't a lot he could do for the farmers in his area. But they all voted for him. And a journalist once asked him what was the secret. And he said, you know what? Sometimes the only thing you can do as a politician is go into the field with a farmer and cry with them. And I think Canadians want answers, but I think they also want someone who's going to go in the field and cry with them if we're seeing layoffs through Donald Trump, if we're seeing this crazy international situation, if we're seeing the economic instability that we have. I think people want to be able to connect with them. And for Poilievre, he's got to figure out how to drop the angry persona. He's got to figure out a way out of this common sense mess because it's not resonating anymore. And for Mark Carney, sure, he's got to talk about policy. He's got to talk about his credentials, but he also needs to connect with people, and people have to feel that he cares about them and that he's there for them. And the fact that he's never held elected office before, that he hasn't spent Friday after Friday in his constituency office meeting with people who are struggling, who he can't. I hate to say it, but he really can't do much for it, but at least he can listen to them and try to show some sort of support. It's going to make it very hard for him, but you know what? It's day 3, day 4 of the election, a long time to go, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. It certainly will be, and always love getting your perspective. John, thank you very much for being here this morning. Thanks, Mike. John Malloy is the director at the Center for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College in Waterloo. Advice on both sides there. Mark Carney is going to have to figure out how to connect with people. Pierre Poilievre is going to have to figure out a way to reconnect, because he certainly was connecting months ago. And as I said on the show earlier today, I fully expect that the pivot will come. Strategically, it has to on the part of the Conservative Party. So I await that next move on the part of the Conservatives. John's argument in the piece that he wrote for the Waterloo Region Record is that what Canadians are really looking for here, what we need, is a sense of hope, that the person who is leading us gives us that hope for a better tomorrow. I can get behind that. There's something else, though, that I desperately want in this election campaign and, frankly, beyond into the next government. I'll share that with you in just a moment, and I'd love to hear from you about what you want from this election. It might just be get rid of this guy or get rid of that guy. Fine, but maybe if there's a little more meat on that bone, you can share it too. What do you want to see come from this election? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Tell me what you're looking for in this federal election. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, definitely, he caught everyone's attention, and he did it by talking about bringing common sense to government. I know common sense has a particular resonance here in Ontario from Mike Harris, but putting in the Poilievre context, he was talking about running a government where things worked, where he set the table for a society where you worked hard, you followed all the rules, and you got ahead.
John Malloy, a former Ontario cabinet minister, and now the director at the Centre for Public Ethics at Martin Luther University College in Waterloo, joins us to talk about this election campaign and what he believes we need to see. And that is a candidate who offers us hope. I can get behind that idea. And John shared the great story of a former agriculture minister who, despite living right there in the rural community that he represented and commiserating with the farmers who were struggling against policies, against change, etc., and realized there's only so much he can do to help. Sometimes the best thing he can do is just stand in that field with the farmer and cry about the plight. And John argues in his latest piece that there are some very difficult times ahead, and many of us may end up standing in our metaphorical fields crying. As we head into the election, the central issue may be which leader has what it takes to join us there. Relate to us, I guess, on that human level. What are you looking for in this election? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. I can tell you exactly what I'm looking for. And as much as I can get behind this idea of hope and that leader that will stand with us in the metaphorical field and cry, there's something else that I dearly want. And I'm quite frankly concerned that I'm not going to get it, and nor will we ever get it again in any election campaign. I hope to be wrong about that, but I'm feeling rather defeatist in all of this. So yesterday on the campaign trail, I heard an awful lot about Pierre Poilievre not having security clearance. I heard an awful lot about Mark Carney and the former Management Institute, Brookfield, taking out a loan with a Chinese bank for an office tower in Shanghai. And then I saw Jagmeet Singh on an advertisement for the federal NDP talking about how Mark Carney will be good for business, but not good for you as a person. And Pierre Poilievre just wants us to become like the United States. So all I heard from each of the leaders was a criticism of the others. Could you please, I'm begging you here, could you please tell me what your vision is for the next 4 years and maybe more for our country? Could you please spend some more time and energy telling me what it is you're going to do and how you're going to go about doing it? I have had it. I have honestly had it, and I'm tuning you out every time. I don't care right now about Pierre Poilievre's security clearance. I don't care right now about the Brookfield management taking out a loan in China. I don't care what Jagmeet Singh thinks of Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre personally. I want to hear what you're going to do. Please, can we focus on that? Let's go to the phones. Hear from you. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Farwell. How are you, sir?
Mr. Dan, I'm very well. How are you, sir?
Oh, life is great, my friend.
Good.
Listen, I thought if I ever ran for election, my campaign would be very simple. Here are my 2 or 3 core values that I promised to do for you in my first term. And if I don't accomplish all of them, I promise never to run again.
I love it. It's so simple, right?
Right. Get it done, or let the real serious people who can get the job done do it, but get out of the way.
Fantastic. That's why, you know what? This is why we've always gotten along. You know that, right?
I know that. I know. Well, because we agree with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course. Dan, good to hear from you. Thank you.
You too, my friend. Take care.
Really appreciate it. Dan and I go way back to high school. He's a little older than me. He was one of my teachers and one of my absolute favorites. And I'm not just saying that because he was just on the phone. But how about that? Here are my core values. 2, 3 that I know I can manage, I can handle, I can deliver on. And if I don't deliver on them, I'm getting the HE double hockey sticks out of the way. I can get behind an idea like that. Why don't we politic that way? I feel or fear as though we've created this monster because I guess we respond to it. We got to stop. We got to try to turn this. I was going to say bus. I think it's an ocean liner. We got to try to turn it around here, and get back to focusing on those 2 or 3 core principles. Here's what I stand for. Here's what I'm going to do for you. If I fail, I'm out. What do you want to see during this election campaign? Let me know. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. You want to see what during this election campaign? Back to the phones to learn more from you, the voter. Dallas, good morning.
Yes, sir. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. I agree with Dan 100%. The way I look at it is all these wonderful promises they make, they don't tell you how they're going to do it. It would be a wonderful thing if they would, and when. And that's the problem with promises. I don't believe in any of their promises, unfortunately, until I see them materialize.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've been conditioned that way, haven't we? As Clive said earlier via email to Mike at 570news.com, how many billions of dollars will be promised today? And where's the funding going to come from? I wish we could grow a money tree, too. Mayor Jake, good morning.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm good, and you?
Not so bad. What I really want from my representative is somebody who will put Canada first. Don't get me wrong. I love that we help countries. I love that we help our neighbors. I love that we do what we can on the world stage. But sometimes I think that the money that we sometimes waste internationally can be spent at home fixing healthcare, fighting crime, getting the housing crisis under control. Those are the things that matter to myself and matter to my family.
Mayor Jake, I appreciate that. We've heard a lot more about it lately, right? A little less on foreign aid, a little more on domestic aid. John, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Hespler, Johnny.
Johnny.
For me, Mike, it's about curtailing the deficit, number one. And number two, immigration. And I don't want to sound... I know we need to curtail immigration until we get caught up with the infrastructure. And I mean zero. Not a body comes in here until we've got enough hospitals and all those wraparound services. And I agree with a lot of what's being said here today. So keep up the good work, Michael.
All right, Johnny. Good to hear from you. You know, I'll take you back to our conversation earlier today, minding Ottawa's business. And that is the focus of the Blacklocks Reporter. We started a new segment on the show. Tom Korski, the managing editor at Blacklocks, will be on with us every Wednesday morning at 10. And one of the tidbits that he shared today was an internal government survey that showed 56% of respondents. This is internal to our federal bureaucracy. And 56% said that immigration has changed their community in a way they do not like. Imagine that. And I think it gets to what John's talking about, the housing crisis. It's not the fault of the people who are coming in. It's the fault of the policies that have allowed too many before we were ready to accommodate them all. And there was a time not too long ago that you said something like that out loud, and boy, oh boy, there would be HE double hockey sticks to pay. Blacklocks Reporter is reporting the story as of this moment. And I think what I'm getting at here is John's sentiment. He's not alone in it. All right, I got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then it's time to live your dreams, not your drama. That conversation coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every morning just before 9 a.m., I do what we call a crossover on the morning show with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas. So it's just a chance for me to get in on their time on the radio and share with you what's coming up on this show today. And when I mentioned to Christine that just after the 11:30 news, we're going to speak to a local author about her book, Live Your Dreams, Not Your Drama, Christine's immediate response was, somebody needed to hear that this morning. And so you won't just get to hear that's the title of the book. You will get to meet its author as Tina Richards joins the program. Tina, it's great to have you here. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited and nervous a little bit. And I wanted to thank you for creating this space for me to spend some time with you.
I'm really happy to do so. And please don't be nervous at all. I tell everybody this is far less painful and or intimidating than a trip to the dentist, okay?
Good to know.
Unless you're one of those weirdos that likes the dentist, Tina, and then we got other conversations here.
I am not.
Okay, good. We're going to get along just fine. Subtitle on Live Your Dreams, Not Your Drama is my journey from victim to victor and your guidebook to getting out of your way and into your life. I want to focus, if we can, at the start on this victim piece. What was it that was happening in your life? What experiences did you have that made you feel as though, even for a time, you were a victim?
Yeah. So for years, I thought that life was just happening to me, right? Like I was trapped in a cycle that I never asked for. There was abuse, trauma, heartbreak, and the struggles of being a teen mom. And it felt like this was just, as many of us do, like, oh, this is my life. And then I realized, well, it was only my life if I stayed the course. And that's what hit me really hard, because I came to understand that, well, this was my inherited life, right? And it's just how I turned out in the matter of it. And it wasn't the life I wanted any longer. And it wasn't who I wanted to be. And I certainly wasn't about to pass that story down to my kids. So I spent over 28 months doing the hardest, deepest personal work of my life to really get real with myself about, who I was being in my life. And I had to really get authentic in all areas of my life. I had to look at relationships, finances, my 9 to 5 and everything to get real with myself. And that's when it really clicked. I was the common denominator in my life, right? So the pain, absolutely real. The struggle, like most of us, absolutely real. But then I came to get, staying stuck, that was a choice. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And I really got that the difference between, being victim and victor was ownership. And the second I stopped waiting for life to change and I took responsibility for my life, everything shifted. I quit asking, why is this happening to me? And I started asking, well, who am I being in the face of this? Right. And that's when I made the shift. And once I made that shift, there was no going back, because I really got that power isn't given to you. You claim it. And I also really got that, you're not defined by your past or what's happened to you. No, you're defined by, what you choose to do next.
When you talk about that 28 months of work that you had to do on yourself, I find that so fascinating because I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that we think of ourselves and work on ourselves last. And so in order to do that, while you're doing all of the other things, working your 9 to 5, whatever it is, to find that time, devote that time to yourself is probably the key in all of this here.
It was the catalyst. You really have to step aside and quit playing small with your life, and you have to make yourself a priority, your life a priority, saying, this isn't a life that's working for me anymore. I have choices, I have decisions, I make those. And then you take your power back and you start living into it. And it's absolutely, listen, this is not unique to me, right? This is absolutely 100%, universally applicable.
I wondered about that because what you're describing here, instead of letting life come to you, take control of where you're at, how you're responding to it. So you're confident, Tina, that anybody can adopt this approach and move on to become a victor, as you describe it?
Yeah, 100%. Pain, struggle, setbacks, right? No one's immune from them. Right? Life happens, and every single one of us faces challenges, right? The difference between those who stay stuck and those who rise, it's not luck. It's not intelligence. It's not the luck of the draw. It's not circumstances, right? Because I used to think that too. It's really how they see themselves in relation to their challenges. And when you live as if life is, happening to you, or you're at the effect of life, you give away your power, right? You start believing that your past, your pain, your circumstances, dictate your future. And yes, I do mean there, your future, not just your present, because the truth is they will. Right? If you don't do something different, you will keep having the same things occur over and over again. And then you'll wonder why nothing's changed, right? And isn't that, Einstein's definition of disability, insanity? It's, doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting different results. Yeah, so I guess really when you realize that, you have the power to decide what happens next, you're no longer your circumstances, you're no longer your reasons or your excuses. So the second that you stop maybe identifying with them is when you actually start living and then creating your life. And this does apply to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're stuck in a marriage that isn't working, or, you're drowning in a toxic work environment, or maybe even like me, right? Carrying, the weight of my past. The circumstances might be different, but the principle is the same. Circumstances are real. There's absolutely no one denying that, but they don't get the final say, right? You do, right? You can let them define you, or you can define yourself in the face of them. And really, there's a lot of things that go behind it, but really, the difference between people who break through and people who stay stuck, the ones who break through, they're not superhuman. They've just made that superpower choice that we have, and it's choice. And they chose to stop waiting for things to change, and they decided to change what was happening in their life.
Was there something for you, Tina, that made you come to this realization? Was there a significant event? I guess I'm looking for the lightning strike, and maybe it didn't exist, but...
Yeah. Yeah, we all have a moment, that moment when you're kind of going through your life and you're like, wow, is this it? And mine was the end of a relationship I had with a partner. And, it was difficult, and he was going through some addiction problems. And I just said, wow, I love him and I support him, and I can't stay in a situation where it's not working. And despite the help that you try to give, it's not working. And I had to really come to terms with that. And I made the decision to leave that relationship and come back home. And, it was when I came back home, I was kind of living in that same cycle that we all do. There was also some infidelity there. And I started, questioning myself, what's wrong with you? How did you do this? It was, he didn't love me. All those things that we tell ourselves, those stories that we tell ourselves. And I wasn't getting over it. I was having a really hard time. And that's when my buddy Greg said, hey, let's go. I'd seen him catapult his life. And yeah, we started talking, and I just started this is it. This is not the life I want. I want a life that's bigger, better, more meaningful. I want more meaningful connections with people. And that was it for me. And that was the catalyst right there.
Why the book? Why live your dreams, not your drama?
I didn't write the book just to tell my story. I wrote it because I know what it's like to feel stuck, right? To look around at your life and wonder, yeah, is this it? And I know what it's like to have a life where you want more, but not know how to get there. And I also know what it takes to break free. And I chose to share because I want to make an impact. Right? I want people to see what's possible for themselves and for their lives. And the way that I looked at it is, I put a lot of my life out there. And, if I'm, if sharing my journey can inspire even one person to transform the course of their lives, then, I want that for them. I want people to know that transformation, it is possible. And frankly, a little bit in writing it, it was cathartic.
I wondered about that because it's pretty raw, Tina. You put a lot of yourself out there in this book.
Yeah, I did. It was cathartic for sure. Writing this meant revisiting some of the hardest Ross moments of my life, not just remembering them, but putting them down, into words in a way that's both relatable, right? For everyone to relate, to see a part of themselves in it, and then to be respectful to everyone who was involved in that piece of my life. And that wasn't always easy. I think, the biggest part, again, is like I had to look back, and as I'm sitting there and I'm writing it, like I had to fully own who I was being in every situation, right? Not just as the victim of circumstances, right? But as someone who, made choices, good, bad, and everything in between. And, that level of self, honesty was uncomfortable at times, but it was, it was also really freeing because when you take full ownership of your life, right? All of it, not just the pretty parts, right? All of it, you stop carrying it like a weight and you start using it as fuel. And that's what my book is, fuel, really for anyone who's, ready to break free from their own limitations, from their past, for their inherited lives, and really starting to, live a life they absolutely love. Because at the end of the day, that's the difference, I think, between people who create their lives and people who just, survive. They get into action about it.
What do you love about your life today?
Everything. I absolutely love everything because I create my life. I choose. I choose to be in a job that I absolutely love, and I get to support school boards across the province. I have a fantastic partner. You know him, Matt. Hi, Matt. And that wouldn't have happened if I had not gotten complete with my past, right? If I had not taken a hard, long look at my past relationships and my past childhood and really gotten it. And I have 2 wonderful kids, and I get to write this book, and I get to be on, shows. Like, I'm just really blessed and really fortunate. And I had, never thought that this was possible, given my inherited life.
Mats is a fantastic guy. I will concur with that.
Thank you.
If we are also interested, Tina, in the power of transformation, live your dreams, not your drama, where I have a copy of the book, and I thank you for that. Where can we find one?
Yeah, so my book is available on shelves at the Book Loft in St. Jacobs. It will soon be available at Wordsworth Books in Waterloo. If you want an online version, it is accessible at indigo.ca, Amazon worldwide, and pretty much everywhere that you can buy books. I also have an upcoming event if anyone is interested on April 12th. From 1 to 2 p.m., I will be at the St. Jacobs Book Loft for an afternoon with the author and a book signing, so you can get copies there. So everyone's welcome to come out and spend some time chatting with me and create some awesomeness.
I think that's a great opportunity. Thanks for your authenticity and for sharing the story with us today. I appreciate it.
And thanks for having me.
Tina Richards is the author of Live Your Dreams, Not Your Drama. She joins us this morning on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are 9 minutes away from an update in the 570 News Center, and then 9 minutes and that news update away from our daily opportunity for open lines, and you can share with us what's on your mind. And it seems there is plenty because we are into its early days still, but the federal election campaign has certainly gotten people's attention, which I love. I really hope it translates to a big turnout at the polls. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, hint, hint, tell a friend. Voting day, April the 28th. Let's make sure we take full advantage of this opportunity that we've been presented thanks to the dissolution of Parliament and the campaign being underway. A couple of other things in the news that have really caught my attention. One in Guelph that I'm still kind of chuckling about. But first I just wanted to touch on, because the pride flag issue at the Waterloo Catholic District School Board on Monday took all of the oxygen out of the meeting. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I understand why it was such a hot button issue. In fairness, the motion as presented was to ban all flags, symbols, political symbols, etc., except for the Canadian, Ontario, and school board flag. However, considering that the pride flag is the only other flag and or symbol ever displayed, I think we can understandably arrive at the conclusion that this is an attack on a marginalized population in our community, thus the response. However, another motion at that school board meeting of our Catholic school board here in the region on Monday was around the recording and live streaming of our Catholic school board meetings, which is not something that is currently happening and is something that blows my mind to learn that it's not happening right now. We should not wait another second for these meetings to be streamed and recorded and archived so we can go back and watch them at any time. This is a publicly funded institution. I can certainly understand how we should probably prevent people from recording the meetings themselves, i.e. coming in with their own recording equipment or recording on a phone, because we don't know exactly where they're pointing that phone or what their purpose is in recording something. So people not being allowed to record on their own, that's fine. But the meeting itself, streamed live and then recorded and archived to the public, just like every council meeting, just like the public school board does, this should not even be an issue. The Catholic school board should be doing this and should be doing this yesterday. So please, if you don't mind, let's get that going. And that kind of got buried in the meeting on Monday with all of the attention given the flag issue. But I'm gobsmacked that we are at a point in our history with technology being what it is, and the Catholic school board doesn't think it needs to be recording and streaming their meetings. These are public meetings at a publicly funded institution. Come on with your coming on over here. It shouldn't even be a question. The other story in the news that I got a kick out of this morning, I have to confess, is the mayor of Guelph, Cam Guthrie, who says that one of the biggest complaints that he hears about automated speed cameras is how long it takes from the time you are ticketed until the ticket arrives in the mail. It's up to a month right now. And Mayor Guthrie in Guelph says that's the number one complaint he's hearing about automated speed cameras. To which I ask, are you sure? Like, are we being fully truthful here? I'm not trying to say anything ill about the mayor of Guelph, but come on. The big issue is that it takes a month to get the ticket. So if people got the tickets faster, they'd be less upset at the cash grab that is the automated speed camera? Sure. Okay. That's the big issue. Waiting 30 days to get your penalty instead of waiting 10 or 15. Anyway, Guelph Council hopes to, by this summer, arrive at a place where these tickets can be delivered faster. I have a feeling it's not going to make people feel any better about the tickets that they're getting. Take a month, take a day. I don't care. How about stop with the cash grab that is automated speed enforcement? How about we do that? I think that might be the biggest complaint. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is that time of day. Time to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then time to hear directly from you. Your Talkback Hour, Talkback Hour is coming up. You want to talk about those polls right now that show a 20% bump for the Liberals under Mark Carney, to the point that 41% of decided voters say if the election were today, they would vote Liberal. Or how about automated speed enforcement? Is your biggest complaint that it takes so ding-dang long to get your ding-dang ticket? I suspect it may be otherwise, but whatever's on your mind, the Talkback Hour is the place for you to get it off your mind and onto the air. It's coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
It is your daily Talkback Hour, where we open the phone lines so we can hear directly from you. I will just quickly share again at the start of this hour something I shared earlier, and it's my theory as to why we've seen such an increase in the polls under Mark Carney for the federal Liberals. Obviously, the change helps, but I can't help but wonder, with the NDP on the precipice, it seems, of disaster, if you're not going to vote NDP, and you historically have, where are you most likely to park your vote? With the other left of center party or with the right of center party? I would submit to you that maybe the near demise of the NDP is also helping to boost the fortunes of the Liberals. Just 2 cents from where I'm sitting today. Let's go to the phones and hear your 2 cents or more. Tom, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I caught a bit of your segment there about what I'd like out of this election and regarding what you're just talking about now. I think a lot of us over the years we sort of did adapt to the promises being made, how much our taxes, they would cut taxes, and how much money we would save on this and save on that. But the reality is that, you can't sell hope. You can try to give hope, but you can't sell it. And sometimes when you're trying to sell hope, there is a cost of selling hope. And the reality of hope is that we're all responsible for certain things, and we can't always rely on a government to fulfill our hopes and promises of buying a house. So, this is part of the issue that I have. Is I just like to have a politician that you can talk to, who's not going to always go on policy points and have a conversation with them, because the reality that none of them are in the same situation a lot of people are in. A lot of these people are already very well off in that, and they're they're being removed from the everyday life that people have to go through. And not everybody can afford a home. Not everybody can even afford to pay their bills. Well, we have politicians who are some live rent-free, some have guaranteed pensions that none of us were ever going to see, and they have all the other benefits that we don't get. So the reality of the situation is that I would like to have a politician, whether it's my party or not who I vote for, we can have a conversation, and a frank conversation. And like you're saying, maybe we can cry together, but I'm also looking at saying, okay, so what can we do here? Like, what is the actual thing that we can do here together to make the situation better for ourselves and for the country?
All right, Tom, I hear where you're coming from. I will just add to that. I've long thought that government is far too big. It's become incredibly bloated. I don't need the government to buy me a house. I need the government to create the conditions that makes it possible for me to buy a house. Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I got a couple of things this afternoon. Happy birthday, John. 86 years old today.
John who? Who am I missing?
My dad.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday, John.
Earlier this morning, just after the 9 o'clock start of your show, there was a caller, Donna, who not going to vote for Pierre or for Mark or whatever.
She did say, so she has historically voted blue, and she said her and her friends who have historically done the same are now going to Mark Carney.
Right. Show me, please, our ballot in Kitchener-Waterloo or whatever zone you're in, I don't care, that has that name on the ballot. That tells you the mentality of our electoral system. There's nowhere on my ballot that I want to vote for Mark Carney or Jugmeat or Pierre. It just doesn't work that way. So are you a party person, or are you a person that wants to vote for your representative that will represent you in Ottawa? And that's the whole problem with our electoral system.
All right, Paul, I hear where you're coming from. I don't know that it's the whole problem with our electoral system. I think that we need reform. I've been clear on that in the past. This is the way it works in the party system for sure. People tend to vote for party over person. So yeah, when they cast their ballot, they're just looking for the Conservative candidate or the Liberal candidate or the NDP candidate. I've always been one that looks for the individual, but that's just not the way that it works. And I can tell you, and you probably know this already, parties do polling of their own to find out how much an individual candidate can move the electorate. And the individual candidate, if you get 8% movement based on the candidate's name in the local riding, you're doing pretty damn well. They don't sway things an awful lot. It's really all about the leader and the party. And after that, it's just the candidate can be fortunate based on the party banner under which they're running. I want you to vote for the best representative, too. That's always been my way of doing it. Dave, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I wanted to briefly comment on the earlier caller who made a comment about Mississauga.
Sure. Kitchener becoming more like Mississauga with all the tall buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Toronto. Then I moved to Mississauga, and I lived 25 years as an adult in Mississauga. And then it got really built up, got real fast. Then I moved to Cambridge, and I've lived more than 15 years in Cambridge. And I saw the need for growth. And then I saw the NIMBY speaking out and against the high rises and putting limit on the high rises and how many stories it could be, and not in my backyard and all the rest of it. And I was really discouraged until the government stepped in, the provincial government stepped in and said, no more. You know, we're building up. We're not building out, especially with those speaking against moving out too. So to me, I say thumbs up to the government stepping in, the provincial government stepping in and saying, look, whatever your disagreements are, we're building up. We have to build up. And I say, you know, get real with those who compare Mississauga to Kitchener or Cambridge. Like, Cambridge is not as built up as KW is, but we're getting there, and we need to get there. So anyway, that's my thought for the day. And go Rangers, go.
All right, Dave. Thanks for that. Playoffs open Friday, baby, against the Flint Firebirds. I will just add, look, Dave's right, and I get it. And maybe Dave deals with change better than some others. I kind of feel similarly to Chris when he called the other day and talked about that, how Kitchener's becoming more like Mississauga. This is a town I grew up in, and it's much different. It doesn't mean it's bad. And Dave's right. We need the housing. But I will add this. I don't have to like it. And frankly, I don't love it. I really don't. And as Aaron told me yesterday in an email when I was kind of kvetching about it, he said you can move, just like Dave moved from Toronto to Mississauga to Cambridge. Well, I've been here. Maybe my next move is to Listowel. Are you ready for me, Listy? It's your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just reflecting a little more on Dave's call, and I guess it's all relative, isn't it? When you go from Toronto to Mississauga, where you spend a quarter century of your adult years, to Cambridge, the relatively low-rise environment in Cambridge is nothing compared to where you've been. On the other side of that coin, if you've always been here, like I have in Kitchener, and you watch it go up, 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 and up, you do start to feel like it's in some of those places that Dave abandoned as he moved to different spots. So, again, Dave's right. We need the housing. I guess I'm just saying, and I'm stubborn this way, you know that. You can't make me like it. I get it, and I understand the need for it, but gosh, my city's changed a lot. I know that makes me sound grumpy. I get it. But as Aaron said in his email to me yesterday, if I don't like it, I can just leave. And that's a fair comment to make. Back to the phones on your Talkback Hour. Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. One more sleep, Mike, for the Blue Jays.
Oh, my gosh, the Blue Jays start tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon.
Perfect. I'll be home in time. I might just have an adult beverage and watch some baseball.
Perfect. And I got a question, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to have Blue Jay Hunter as a regular segment again this year?
Yes, sir, I am.
Excellent. And what day? Can you tell me what day that's going to be?
I can absolutely tell you what day that's going to be because the season starts tomorrow. Ian Hunter, our Blue Jay Hunter, will begin his weekly appearances next Wednesday, the 2nd of April.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. I always like his perspective.
As do I. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care. So mark that down. Blue Jay Hunter every Wednesday morning at 11. If you are a regular longtime loyal listener, you might think, wait a minute, wasn't he 11:30 last season? He was, but there's another segment coming too. So starting next Wednesday, Blue Jay Hunter will join us every Wednesday through the baseball season. We'll talk Blue Jays baseball and hopefully have a better season than last season. And then just a week later, we're going to have a new segment on Wednesday mornings at 11:30 called Political R&D. R&D, research and development, or anyway, it's going to be a segment with a former local politician who's going to bring us the heat, let me tell you. So we're going to get that every Wednesday morning at 11:30 in a couple weeks' time. So Blue Jay Hunter starts next week, every Wednesday at 11 through the Blue Jays season, and the week following, Political R&D on Wednesday mornings at 11:30. We got some stuff cooking for you on this show. Back to the phones at the Talkback Hour. Grant, good afternoon.
So the Blue Jays.
The Blue Jays. Boo Jay? You want to boo them?
They'll try this year probably and maybe not make it. I'm going to touch on three things. And did you mean not to vote for NDP? I'm not too sure what you meant.
I didn't mean not to vote for NDP. Okay. I'm just not sure how many people are interested in doing that in this election.
Oh, okay, because I always go for the platform. First the platform, then the individual.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think, no, you can't move anywhere.
I can move wherever I want, thank you very much.
I don't want you to.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, I think, but I can move wherever I want.
I think what you should do for your Mike for Hire, I think you should make, for a donation, mad. Just to...
The head coach of the Kitchener Rangers?
Yeah, I think you should make him mad.
Yeah, as if I haven't made him mad before. Not a bad idea. I don't think I want to do that, though. However, I will use this as an opportunity to remind you that the 12th annual Farwell for Hire fundraising campaign starts in like 5 weeks, May the 1st, and we're going to kick it off with a party, and you're invited. I'd love to have you come out and listen to some music and eat some food and have some fun with us on that Thursday night. Don't worry, we won't keep you out late, unless you want to, if that's your kind of party. But Thursday, May the 1st, at the museum in downtown Kitchener, tickets just $25. Every ticket you buy gets you entered into a great door prize. And you can come and enjoy the music and enjoy the food, enjoy the good times. Details on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. Let's have a party on Thursday, May the 1st. Talkback Hour continues here on The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Your Talkback Hour gives you the chance to have your voice heard. If it's an issue important to you, it's important to us. Back to the phones. Andre, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. A couple of things. Just to clear my mind here. So the playoff, of course, is Friday. I'm going to be there with my son, Winter. Thank you to the crack specialist for the tickets. The question is, there was a lot of confusion between where we're going to start the first game. Was it Sault Ste. Marie, maybe?
Yeah, it took until the final weekend to determine who the Rangers were going to face in the first round. But we always thought it would be Flint, and that's where we ended up.
Exactly. And Flint, it's nicer weather, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. See? Okay, so that's one good point, too. Do you know why why at the Odd it's always cool there?
Because it's a hockey arena, Andre.
No, because every seat has a fan. You have a good trip, Mike.
Thanks, Andre. I didn't quite pick up on that one. Well played by you, Andre. Well played by you. Let's talk about that just a little bit further, shall we? Kitchener Rangers open the playoffs against the Flint Firebirds Friday night. On Sunday afternoon, we will play Game 2 at home at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium against the Flint Firebirds. And then, of course, the Rangers will go on the road for Games 3 and 4. Those games will happen next Tuesday and Thursday evening. You know that this is your home for Kitchener Rangers hockey, right? 570 News Radio is a proud Kitchener Rangers partner. We bring you every game home and away. And it just so happens that I'm one of the broadcasters for Kitchener Rangers hockey, along with my buddy Paul Fixter. So we're going to be on the road with the team next week. But don't worry about it, as our buddy Mike the Moose Reeves would say. Mike the Moose Reeves is our bus driver for the Kitchener Rangers. Don't worry about it. Here's what's going to happen. We do have some travel days when we will actually be on the road moving about next week. But when I am situated in Flint, I will be broadcasting from my hotel room or somewhere in the hotel. We'll see how that all works out. But I'm going to be with you on the show next week, even when we're on the road. So next Monday and Friday, which are travel days, Larry Fedorik's going to be here. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to be here. We'll have our usual shenanigans on the show. We'll talk a little bit about the Rangers. Hopefully, the aforementioned Mike the Moose Reeves will join us for some Moose tracks, and we can talk about his life in the driver's seat of that bus. But even when the Rangers are on the road next week, we are going to have the same show Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Your Talkback Hour continues as well here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. A quick question there. I understand the $2 billion fund to protect the auto industry and its workers against tariffs. Cool. I understand that the consumer carbon tax has been ended. I guess that was revenue neutral, right? But either way, with less money coming into federal coffers, all I would like to know from Liberal leader Mark Carney is, we're balancing the budget. How? You keep taking the money out and not having it come into the federal government revenue sources. Where are we going to get it to balance the budget? I would like a balanced budget. I know it's a lot to ask, but that's just me. Let's go back to the phones on your Talkback Hour. Imran, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Help me to understand something.
I'll try.
I'm talking about the election, federal election that's coming up. And if you look at the Nanos poll in January 2025, it was conservative around 47%, and liberal was trailing behind at a 20% poll rate. So and now it's neck and neck. So I want to understand, help me to understand, because I want to make the right decision to cast my vote. Only change in the recent days is the Trump issue, right? Like the threat to Biden, which is really important. But I want to understand, are we now forgetting the other issues we're having back in the days, like healthcare, economy, housing, crime? Those conditions is now less important to Canadians. Trump is the only important issues that going to decide who's going to win the election. Like, is it how it works? Like, help me to understand. Like,
listen, Imran, it's a great point, and I appreciate the call. I will just say this right off the hop. You want to cast the most informed ballot. Please cast it for the person that you think will represent you best. Please don't cast your ballot based on what the polls are telling you. If you get a phone call and you are asked to participate in a poll, by all means, participate in that poll. But when it comes to your vote, don't vote based on what the polls say. Vote based on the person that you believe is going to best represent you in your riding. Or if you want to look at the party platform and vote for a particular leadership character, then you go right ahead and do that too. But please don't vote based on the polls. How can I help you understand? It's a great question, and one we've been exploring on the show here today. I think Imran touched on one of the key parts of this. Instead of now being a conversation about how everything is broken in Canada, healthcare, housing, our court system, prison system, whatever, this has now very much become an election about our response to Donald Trump in the United States and the tariffs that are being imposed on us. That's what the election has become about. And so when we look at the various leaders and the options before us, it would appear, based on the polls, that more of us think, at least today, that the Liberals can help lead us into a future that means dealing with Donald Trump on a regular basis. That's one thing. There are other things, I think, to consider in all of this. One is, and I mentioned it at the beginning of this hour as well as earlier in the show, when I looked at these poll numbers, because Imran is so right, the Conservatives just a few months ago were running 20 points plus ahead of the Liberals, and now the Liberals are running slightly ahead of the Conservatives. How do you explain something like that? One of the things that popped into my mind is the complete and utter lack of support, it seems, for the NDP. Some are saying the NDP might not even have official party status by the time this election is done. So if you historically voted NDP and you're not going to now because you don't like what they have on offer, where might you place your vote? If it's not going to be NDP, do you think maybe you'd stick on the left side of the political spectrum and park your vote with the Liberals? I think that's quite possible, if not likely. So that might be one part of the resurgence for the Liberals. But there are other elements of this to consider as well. And to kind of tie it back into what I said a moment ago about not casting your ballot based on the polls. Remember, polls are a snapshot in time. And if we're being brutally honest here, they haven't exactly had the best track record lately, at least not when it comes to the outcome of elections, right? If I'm not mistaken, in the last federal election in the United States, they had Kamala Harris just ahead of Donald Trump, and we know what happened in that one. They certainly had Hillary over Trump back in 2016. We know what happened there, et cetera, et cetera. Polls have not exactly had their best performances lately. But then when we dive into the sort of detail, the nitty-gritty of a poll, remember this: the more staunch or hardcore conservatives tend to ignore polling altogether because they don't believe in polls. They kind of liken polls to things that are performed by the mainstream media, which they don't always like either. So somebody who is likely to vote conservative might also not be likely to participate in a poll at all. So when you're looking for your representative sample, more Liberal supporters are just responding, period. The other thing, and this ties into what I was just saying about the NDP's fortunes right now, historically what we see in polling, again, if you want to get in behind the numbers, is NDP supporters poll high, but turnout for the vote lower. So they'll tell you in a poll, oh yeah, I'm supporting the NDP, but then they don't go out and actually mark a ballot. That's what polling historically has said. So if the NDP voter who is going to switch to Liberal says, yeah, I'm voting Liberal, it's possible, if not likely, that they won't even show up to vote anyway, because that's how NDP polling has typically gone. So keep all of that's a lot, right? But keep all of those things in mind. And I think the most important takeaway from Imran's call is that you should not vote or decide your vote based on a poll, in my opinion. I would strongly urge you to not base your vote on the current polling. This is the Mike Farwell Show. It's your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Talkback Hour is your daily opportunity between noon and 1 to share with us your thoughts on an issue that we've talked about on the show or another issue of the day that's important to you. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Back to the phones we go. Greg, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. I got a question on a couple of the topics that are tabled today. So polls. Last time I phoned in about my thoughts on polls, remember what they were?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, I'll remind you. It's like, why do them? Because, like, say the recent, okay, I know you just said that they're not always accurate, but I don't think it would have been as inaccurate for Doug Ford recently to not have that result. And again, if it's sort of almost like, oh, well, that's going to be decided, why go out and vote then if, it looks like it's already done? I would think that, okay, do your polls if you want, keep the stats ahead of time hidden, then go and compare whatever. If they like, I don't see what actually positive purpose does a poll serve.
Well, I think it's kind of like watching a sporting event, right? If you're turning it on partway through, you want to know who's in the lead. What's the score? It kind of gives us a sense of where we're at in the race. And I think it helps the parties too.
Well, again, I think it's more like maybe a preseason game in a sport, kind of like ultimately it doesn't mean anything. So, okay, so that's on that topic. And then regarding the size of KW nowadays, like I liked it when I was a kid. Nowadays, it is more like, Mississauga or whatever in the way of size and congestion and all this. Why do we figure we have to keep growing?
Well, without growth, Greg, the opposite is stagnant, right? We don't want to be stagnant.
Okay, what's wrong with staying as a small town? Like who's benefiting from, okay, now another subdivision going, another subdivision, and now it's getting more traffic. Like if I'm a business owner, sure, more people here might buy something, but like, I don't know of anybody that's really like, oh, that's great. We've doubled the size since being a kid, and now it's like, thriving metropolis as opposed to the quiet. Like, I don't understand the push for having to, we got to keep growing.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. The concern would obviously be, Greg, that if you're not growing, then you're stagnant. And if you're stagnant and then something disappears, like a major employer, let's just say, very hypothetically, that Toyota shut down, and you haven't been growing enough to kind of replace that or whatever. Not that it would be easy to replace, but then next thing you know, you're going to have tumbleweeds blowing down King Street.
Okay, and again, I guess whether there's tumbleweeds or a Toyota plant, for me, indifferent.
You'll take the tumbleweed?
To me.
Really?
Well, that's the thing.
What kind of city do you want to live in? What kind of community do you want to live in? What do you want available to you?
Well, again, I suppose people working for Toyota, yes, or the fringe benefits of having so many people come in, like, again, business-related type of thing.
Sure, but even, you get spoiled, Greg. Like, just think of grocery stores, for example. They're not going to set up in a place where there's such a small population that they can't make money. So you might be driving to Cambridge or Milton to go to the grocery store.
Okay, well, I guess there's enough options close enough by for certain things. I guess, picturing just how it used to be. And, okay, you can't go over to Dutch Boy, to theirs or whatever, I think. And, I don't know, I don't know, maybe I'm just too old school in too many ways, but yeah, I might move to Listowel with you. Put it
buddy, we can be neighbors. I'll take it.
I know the town well. I delivered there for 18 years. So.
All right, sounds good.
All right, good for now.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. It reminds me of, and I'm going to forget the actual name for it, but there is a movement, and Chuck, I think it was Chuck that brought it to my attention. I'm sorry, just stream of consciousness here. It really doesn't matter who brought it to my attention, right? But the movement is along the lines of why this emphasis on growth. What about an anti-growth movement? It was along those lines. And I kicked the tires on it, and then it originated with a New York Times op-ed. I didn't find much. Again, I spent 30 seconds to 3 minutes looking through it and seeing what kind of connection I could make to it locally. I didn't find much. I kind of gave up, but it's been in the back of my mind. So it really speaks to Greg's point. And it's not to be anti-growth. Well, in this particular case, the movement is. With Greg and I, we're just reminiscing and being those kind of stubborn older guys that say, well, it's not the same city I grew up in. And there is a great deal of emphasis on growth, right? We are defined by the provincial government as a place to grow here in Waterloo Region, which means when newcomers arrive, this is the area along the Windsor to Quebec corridor that they should settle. The Golden Horseshoe, when we include the Hamilton and Niagara regions into this with Toronto and Waterloo Region, et cetera. This is defined as a place to grow because we've got a lot going on here. And we tend to look at growth as a good thing, right? More people, more vibrancy, more jobs, et cetera. But what about the anti-growth movement? Maybe it's worth me looking into a little bit more. Maybe you know more about it than I do already and want to share thoughts on that. Growth at all costs? I don't know. It's your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. 4 minutes away from 1 o'clock, your update in the 570 News Center. And then Now You Know with Rob Snow until 3 this afternoon. Back to the phones on our Talkback Hour. Chris, good afternoon.
Mike, how do townships and cities make money when they don't get enough from the taxes? I'll tell you how. They put speed cameras. That's how they make it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Listen, I get it. Please, when it comes to the automated speed enforcement, please go ahead and enforce your school zones all you want. Please enforce them during school hours, not on weekends, not on holidays, not in the summertime, not on Christmas. Come on with your coming on around here. And I feel you, Chris. I feel you. I do not like them, Sam. I do not like those cams. I am. Mary, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Good afternoon. A sunny afternoon, a cold afternoon. I was interested, I was thinking about that lady that called in just after 9 o'clock who said she's going to vote for Carney because, do you remember it?
I do remember, yes. She said she usually votes blue.
She doesn't know Polyev.
No, she said she can't vote for...
I was just wondering how she knows Carney. Did she have...
Mary, that's not what she said. She said she usually votes blue, but she can't vote for Polyev.
She said she doesn't know anything about him.
Okay. Maybe I remember it wrong.
Well, that's what she said.
Okay.
So
you want to know if she had high tea with Mark Carney?
Well, how does she know him any better?
I don't know.
Well, I think that's a bunch of garbage.
Okay.
And anyway, so these high rollers put offshore accounts in Bermuda. Where have you? Do you remember that?
Oh, of course I do.
Yeah, and how many times has it come up in the government? Oh, we're losing a lot of tax money.
Oh, you want to... Listen, let's repatriate the tax money. I'm with you, Mary. Let's do it.
No, I know. But it never goes because lots of people in government and high rollers, that's what they do. Do you think they're ever going to change that? No way.
No way.
And listen, if anybody knows the hardship of life, it would be Pierre Polyev, not Mark Carney.
Wait a minute. How so? He's been in politics for 8 terms, Mary, since his 20s. Come on.
Well, okay.
But that's an awfully good job.
But he was born of a single mother and adopted. Doesn't that give you a little insight into life?
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry you're not with me on that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, do you think Mark Carney knows what...
No, I'm not saying that he does. I'm just saying let's not get carried away and talk about a career politician as having had a necessarily difficult life. That's all.
Bah humbug.
Okay. Thanks, Mary. Good to hear from you. That one went in a direction, didn't it? All right. And just like that, we are out of time for another day. Let me peek into our show tomorrow. Oh, how about Preston Springs? The development at Preston Springs. Can we stop it? Who's going to chain themselves to what's left of Preston Springs and stop the development? I don't know that anybody is, but there is at least one man who is not taking this quietly. We'll hear from him on the show tomorrow and a lot more. Jen Tan is our board operator today. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.